Does anyone here read romance novels? Yeah, I see you over there. I love romance novels. And there are so many different tropes, right? There's the childhood best friends to lovers, second chance romance, fake dating, but I have to say the one that takes the cake for me, my absolute favorite trope of all has to be enemies to lovers. I mean, think about it. These are two people with polar opposite beliefs to each other. And imagine when the stakes are really high. Think Romeo and Juliet. The Montagues and the Capulets had centuries of blood feud between them. These are two entities that we would never think would be on the same side of anything. But then something happens. And when they get together, something magical happens. Something powerful. Well, today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite enemies to lovers stories, but no, it's not Romeo and Juliet. I am talking about the head and the heart. Now, from the dawn of time, we have been taught to believe that the head and the heart are on complete opposites of the spectrum, that they are opponents, that they are antagonistic of each other. Well, today I'm going to ask all of us to leave those preconceptions behind. And I want to encourage us all to view them not as antagonistic, but instead as complementary. Because in this society that we live in, we are faced with so many cruxes of change. We are in a world defined by change, by turbulence. And we'll find that believing in just one of these things is not enough. We need them to work together. We need to see them in tandem. Because 9 times out of 10, it is the combination of both logic and emotion that moves us as people. It is the combination of both sense and sensitivity, because sensitivity without sense is empty. But sense without sensitivity is just plain cruel. And cruelty never moved anyone. Emptiness never moved anyone. But what does move us as people is the combination of these concepts. So today we're going to marry together these parts of ourselves. We are going to marry together logic and emotion, sense and sensitivity, the head and the heart. And we will use this marriage as the foundation for us to talk about critical compassion. Now, what is critical compassion? Let's break it down very simply. Critical is a process of the mind. It just means we're thinking things through. We're assessing things from both their good sides and their bad sides. We're being thoughtful about things. And compassion, well, I'm sure you know what compassion means. I'm sure most of us would like to think that we are compassionate individuals. But one thing that I would like to clarify is that there is a difference between compassion and other sympathetic emotions like pity, sympathy, empathy. Because those three things are static, whereas compassion requires motion. When you are compassionate, it is not enough to just feel for someone's suffering. It is not enough to understand their pain. True compassion requires us to get down in the dirt and do something about someone's suffering. So we will put these two concepts together, but I'm not going to ramble on too much about definitions right now. Let's talk about practical examples of how we can apply critical compassion to our lives by moving through my own version of the socio-ecological model. Now, one of the most important relationships of our lives is not going to be one with a partner or with a friend or with our parents. It is going to be your relationship with yourself. Because that is going to be the very foundation, the very core of all of your interactions with everybody else. Your relationship with yourself is an ecosystem in itself. It is a world in itself. It is one that requires us to nurture. So we will start here with Dunia Aku, the personal space. Now, how can we practice critical compassion towards ourselves in this sphere? I'll give you an example. When I was working on this speech, I was having a horrible set of days. I was so demotivated, I was sleep deprived, I was stressed, I couldn't eat, and there was this mountain of work just staring at me in the face, begging me to do it. But I couldn't move myself to get there. I felt so dysfunctional in this moment. And so, if I decided to just be entirely critical, just use my head, my logic, what I would have said to myself was, you know what, Angie? This work is work that you know you can do. And you know that you will feel better once you've completed it. So just get your head down on your laptop and do it. But the thing is, if I were to force myself to do my work just then, to do all of it, my work would have been terrible. Because when our minds are not in it, when we are filled with emotion, we are not going to produce work that we can be happy with, that we can be proud of. And here's the thing, we can't just simply ignore our emotion because that's not entirely reasonable either. We live in a world of emotion. Everybody here feels emotion. Everybody here is affected by it. So ignoring it is simply not reasonable. So okay, I can't be completely critical about this. What should I do? How about I instead show compassion? Let's be kind to yourself. I'm going to call up my friends. I'm going to say, let's go out. Because I need to feel better. I know that is definitely going to lift my spirits. And that is the kindest thing that I could do to myself. I'm going to call this self-care. But the thing is, it wouldn't really be caring for myself, would it? Because I would just be setting myself up to having an even worse day tomorrow. Because I'm going to have the same amount of responsibilities with less amount of time. So sure, I might be caring for my present self, but what about my future self? Or what about my past self that worked so hard to get here? So I thought to myself, how am I going to combine both the thoughts of my head and the wants of my heart? How can I practice critical compassion instead? So the first thing I did, I went into my room and I called one of my best friends and I just sobbed on the phone for 20 minutes. All of those 20 minutes, she listened to me, she reassured me, God bless her heart. But after that phone call ended, I didn't feel great, but I did feel okay enough that I could go eat, that I could go have a shower. My body felt safe enough that I could take a nap, and I finally got to rest in I don't know how many days. And when I woke up, my mind felt okay enough that I could open up my laptop and start typing out this section of this speech, actually. My point is that critical compassion is what enabled me to be able to nurture my body and lift my spirits just enough for me to fulfill my responsibilities. Because fulfilling my responsibilities is part of self-care. I am a champion of self-care. I am a champion of being kind to yourself. But I do believe that even kindness is something that we have to be smart about. And the great thing about this is when we are kind to ourselves, it becomes infinitely easier for us to be kind to other people. And that leads me to the next sphere, which is dunia kami, the interpersonal sphere. This one reigns over our relationships with our loved ones, our families, our friends, anyone you have a one-on-one connection with. We should be infusing critical compassion into every single one of our interactions with these people. Let's say, for example, you have a loved one who makes certain lifestyle choices that you can't really understand or that you don't agree with. Our first instinct may be to meet it with judgment. It is not an uncommon reaction, as most of us, as humans, naturally feel discomfort when faced with something outside of our bubble of familiarity. But let's pause, and instead of spewing judgment, let's take a step back and try to recall critical compassion. The first thing is that critical compassion requires us to ask the right questions. And I find that one of my favorite questions to ask is, who does this hurt? Sometimes the answer to that is no one. So then you can differentiate when a behavior doesn't really hurt anyone, it's not harmful, it's just unfamiliar to you. And when we recall critical compassion, that then enables you to extend love and understanding to someone that maybe you don't agree with, or you don't understand, or you're unfamiliar with. Let's say it does hurt someone. Let's say it hurts themselves. Your loved one is making decisions that hurts themselves. Well, employing critical compassion then would look like showing them support, showing them that you're there for them without enabling their bad behavior. But let's say, for example, it doesn't just hurt themselves, it hurts you too. Well, my answer to that, you can guess it, it's still going to be critical compassion, because when we look at these outer spheres, that does not mean we are going to ignore the core in here. Because you are going to find yourself in situations where you will have to ask yourself, is it critically compassionate for me to stay in this position? And let's say the behavior is not harmful to themselves or to you, but harmful to society. Then the question then becomes, is it critically compassionate to the world that I allow this behavior to slide? And the cool thing about these spheres is that our spheres will overlap with each other. Because I will show you critical compassion, then you will show your friends critical compassion, and your friends will show their friends critical compassion, and before you know it, we've created a chain of kindness that has made our world a more thoughtful place. We would have done our part in making our world kinder. And that's what brings me to the last sphere, which is dunia kita, the global sphere, the societal sphere. That chain of kindness that I was talking about, yes, it does talk about how kind people make a kind world, but it doesn't end there, and this is the coolest part. Kind people make a kind world, but a kind world also breeds kind people. Because think about it, how much easier would it be to be a good and kind person if you knew that the world that you lived in was also going to be good and kind to you? How much more patient would you be? How much more compassionate? How much more understanding? How much less judgmental would you be if you knew that the world around you was conducive to that sort of behavior and reciprocated that? So when you think about it, practicing critical compassion doesn't just create a better world, but it also creates an environment that lets you become a better version of yourself. I call that 2 birds, 1 stone. But the thing is, on top of that, critical compassion does not just extend to making a kinder world, but also to making our world one that is more socially conscious. We're aware of so many major issues that are happening globally. And I would like to talk about just one of them as an example, because I have a secret for all of you. And it is that every single global issue that you see today in this world is structural. Every issue can be broken down to the smallest unit, and that unit is our actions. So the example I would like to talk about is the issue of sexual assault. Now you may have seen a version of this diagram. This is called the Rape Culture Pyramid by the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance in 2016. Now I'm not going to get into all of the details, but what I want you to notice is that the most heinous crimes up top are built upon the foundation of small, minor, mundane actions that we may look past and overlook in our daily lives. All of the big issues that we see in the world, we can substitute this for any of the big issues. They don't start up here. They start down here and then they build up. My point in telling you this is that the issues we face in this world are not just structural, but they are so complex. And it requires a critical mind to understand the complexity of all of it. Because without critical thinking, we may just think that, oh, the issue just stands up here, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's just too big for me. But when we employ enough critical thinking to realize that there is a system to this, there is a structure to this, there is actually something you can do, then that would take us one step closer to bringing about change. But the thing is, critical thinking is not enough. Because let's say you understand everything on a theoretical level, And then what? We need to partner our critical mind with a compassionate heart, because it does not stop at understanding the issue. We then must have enough compassion, not just to understand, but to actually get up and do something about the issue. What if with critical compassion I understand now how this issue works, so I'm going to have the uncomfortable conversations that stops this level of the pyramid? What's going to happen to the rest of it after that? So in all of the issues that we face, we are going to recall again the wit of the mind and the authenticity of the heart. And I want everybody coming home from this to realize that what you do does in fact matter. Because change in our world is brought about by culture. And culture is driven by actions. And actions are driven by our attitudes. So if change happens up here, it happens because of actions over here, and that is driven by the attitudes here. And frankly, I cannot think of a better attitude to drive us than critical compassion. Because overall, critical compassion is what calls us to learn and to take action. It is what calls us to understand our place in the family of things. We must realize that we do have a place in making change in this world. You are not too small. Your critical compassion has the power to create a ripple effect that can create massive changes in our world. We are going to enact kind but effective change. We are going to lead with the wit of the mind and the authenticity of the heart. We are going to lead with humility and not pride. We are going to learn every single time we teach. And we are going to speak up. We are going to lend our voices to those on the margins. But we are going to do so with knowledge, with education. We are going to say no to performative activism or volunteering practices that have its roots in paternalistic values. We are going to be informed, educated, and empowered agents of change because we have employed both the head and the heart. And we do this by realizing our responsibility to practice critical compassion at every single level. So I'm going to show you these spheres one last time. And we can see how when we start at the core and you show critical compassion to yourself, then we can expand that into showing critical compassion to those around you. And finally, we can create a critically compassionate world that is truly an image of kindness and thoughtfulness. And the critical compassion at our core can radiate out of us and pour into every crack, crevice, and corner of this earth. And we will birth and bloom a world that will give back to all of us. And this is how critical compassion can save all of our worlds. Thank you.